pullover was a staple exercise in virtually every old school bodybuilder's training routine. Originally, it was done with just simple barbells and dumbbells, but eventually, bodybuilders started performing this movement on cable machines, and later, with the creation of the early Nautilus equipment, the original chain-driven pullover machine was created. Each one of these variations has their own unique strength and weaknesses. The pullover was a favorite of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and many other bodybuilders with massive torsos. And more importantly, all the bodybuilders with extremely large rib cages, they all credit their development to this movement. It was a staple and relatively common movement in the gym back then. But today, many people are confused about this exercise. The first thing I see is many people don't know if it's a chest exercise or a back exercise, if it should be used to target the serratus anterior or the finger-like muscles that run down the sides of the torso. And many people don't know if it should be treated as a heavy mass building exercise or a strict targeted more isolation movement. And the truth is, the pullover is such a versatile exercise that it can be used to accomplish all of these things. The key lies in which variation you perform. Originally, when bodybuilders performed this exercise, it was done with a barbell. Generally, the weights were loaded on the floor behind them, and they performed this exercise with a bent arm. Bodybuilders would pull the barbell from behind their heads on the floor all the way up to their chest. This variation being a compound movement working both the shoulder and the elbow joint. The lats, the upper chest, and the triceps are worked heavily on this movement. This variation was done more for power and strength, and it was an exercise done alongside big compound movements. Things like clean and presses, squats, and deadlifts. Now, guys like Arnold prefer the dumbbell variation on a flat bench. He performed this variation with more of a straight arm. And using a dumbbell, it allows for a much greater stretch of the lats. This greater range of motion and a straighter arm, this creates much more engagement of the lats specifically. But it also targets the muscles around the shoulder and the serratus anterior. And it's a variation that's often spoken about when guys talk about rib cage expansion. Although expanding the rib cage itself is a much deeper topic and one that's open for debate, performing the straight arm pullover with a dumbbell is absolutely one of the best exercises for developing all the muscles around the rib cage. This exercise can be done specifically to target the lats, but don't be confused. It's a compound movement and the chest and the triceps are still hit very hard on this exercise. Personally, I feel this variation works very well if you're training chest and back together in the same session. But now, if we're talking about something like a cable or a machine pullover, the goal here is to remove as much elbow movement as possible, focusing on just having that shoulder joint moving. This now turns the pullover into as close of a lat-specific isolation exercise as you're going to get. And when performing them on a cable machine specifically, the key is to keep a slight bend in the elbow, but then lock it in that position. You should focus on going for the deepest possible stretch of the lats at the top of the movement. Then bring that bar back down towards the torso in the bottom position, squeezing and contracting the lats as hard as you can. If you're performing your pullovers like this, you can be sure it's a lat-specific movement, and it should be done on back day. But remember, that doesn't mean that it's going to train only the back. And actually, the triceps are still worked in this variation, although indirectly and not enough for me to consider it a tricep-specific movement. So when picking and choosing the best pullover variation, you need to ask yourself, what is the goal? If you want power and strength specifically, and you want to add mass to the entire upper body, the barbell pullover is a great choice. If your goal is more hypertrophy specific, and you want to grow the lats and the serratus anterior, the straight arm or even a slightly bent arm dumbbell pullover might be a better option. And if your goal is to strictly target the lats, and you want to isolate that muscle as best as you can with the least amount of work to the chest, the cable or machine variation is going to be the best bet for you. But regardless of which one you choose, the pullover is an excellent movement. And in my opinion, it can be incorporated into any training routine. And if you want the training programs that I personally recommend to build muscle using proven old school bodybuilding methods, check out all my mass gain programs down below. And as always, if you guys want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.